Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is episode 113 of the Audible Farm podcast, and this episode is brought to you by Couchtown Coffee. Couchtown Coffee is roasted right here in Iowa, and they will make coffee specifically for the order and then ship it to whoever ordered it. That's correct. If you want the best whole beans that Iowa has to offer, hit up Couchtown Coffee at couchtowncoffee.com. Find a coffee you like and make an order, and they will roast beans specifically for you and then ship them to your house. If you enter the code Audible Farm when you make an order, you'll save 20%. You can't beat that. Thanks, Couchtown. Appreciate it. Get yourself some coffee, people. Support local. This week's episode features Josh Wiig. Josh, I had never met him before. He got in contact with me on the internet and said, hey, what do you think about talking to me? And he sent me some links, and I was intrigued, and here we go. So I sat down with Josh. He is a solo singer-songwriter as well as a musician in the band called the Open Interest Band. They play covers, they play originals. He's got solo tunes. He's got a solo album. He's working on EPs. All sorts of cool stuff going on in this episode. I hope you guys enjoy it and check this out. I had a great time talking with Josh. Like I said, first time I ever really met him. I don't really know if you can call Skyping with somebody, meeting them, but it was close. I met him, and great guy. It was a great episode. I hope you guys enjoy this one as much as I did. I'm looking forward to hopefully catching one of Josh's shows sometime. So check that out. It's episode 113 with Josh Wiig.
It's the Audible Farm Podcast with your host, Peter Stockdale.
Well, my name is Josh Wiig, and I actually grew up in Stanton, Iowa. And my wife, I, and my two kids, we live in Red Oak, Iowa, which is about maybe 15 minutes west of where I grew up. Kind of just been stuck here in Iowa, just, doing my thing. I do commute for work every day, but, music has always been kind of always there in the back of my mind. As things have come and gone in my life, there's a couple things that have always stayed the same for me, and that's obviously my work ethic, and then music comes in there with all the ups and downs in life. It always seems to always be there, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And as we get older, I've noticed that sometimes my musical tastes have changed from time to time, but you still find yourself going back to that point in time where you were 16 or 18 or 22 or 25, and some of those bands like Incubus or Linkin Park were really coming out. They're in like the year 99, 2000, stuff like that. And I think it really shaped kind of shaped who I was, with my taste in music from that point on. And, there's another thing that's interesting about the music that you listen to. Typically, your mom isn't the one that always is like, hey, have you heard this new band, or have you been listening to that? But I'll tell you what, she was the one that really got my brother and I kind of hooked when we were little on music, because we always listened to it in the car, going back and forth to the babysitter every day. We'd listen to Bryan Adams and Mr. Big and Richard Marx and Garth Brooks. And so it really kind of rounds your taste in music, right?
Yeah.
When was the last time, hey, I really like listening to Richard Marx music, But if you go back in time, dude, I guarantee you there were like all sorts of like 30-year-old moms that loved Richard Marx back in the day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Dude, that's wild that, your parents cruised around and listened to music with you, especially your mom, when I was growing up, it was talk radio all the time. That's all I got to listen to. And by guess and by golly, if there was radio, it was like 60s and 50s tunes. I got to listen to a lot of Roy Orbison growing up and things like that. Oh, right. Which, there's nothing wrong with that, I guess. But by the time I chose my own music, it was much different than that, to say the least.
So what's some of the music that was influential in for you?
Oh, like I grew up, like I said, listening to like the Roy Orbison and stuff, and then the first music I found that I kind of related to was like punk music, you know. So it was around the 2000s, the big boom of the pop punk era, and Warped Tour was huge, and so I was like, I gotta go do this thing and love what everyone else is loving, and then the later you get in your teenage years, some people get angry or angstier. So then someone was like, you should try out listening to like Megadeth and Anthrax and Metallica and Iron Maiden. And then I went that
Yep.
direction. And now it's blues. I don't know what the deal is. It just keeps changing every year and more and more.
Well, I mean, it's just one of those things. Like I think music in general connects with you on some level, depending upon where your state of mind is.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you want to kind of chill out. Blues might be the thing. When I want to chill out, I listen to Slipknot. It's so weird. But for whatever reason, inside that chaos,
Yeah.
there is some sort of like, I don't know, some part of me that's like, you know what, this is kind of calming.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, it's good.
So if we harken back to like your mom letting you listen to music in the car and things like that, was that what inspired you to play music, or did you like grow up and like start playing the trumpet, or did she say you got to take piano lessons when you're 5, or how did this all start? That's kind of like where I'm curious now.
Okay, so like in 5th grade, everybody was like, "Hey, you got to go into band, right?" Everybody has to take band practice, like everybody and their brothers. So of course, I get a trumpet. I'm like, "What is this?" You know. I was like, I'd rather play like guitar or drums or something, and about 1 billion other people wanted to play the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember getting a trumpet because there was only like 3 trumpet players in the whole bunch, and I think it lasted maybe like 2 months. And I couldn't handle it. I was like, I can't do this. I don't know. It just didn't jive with me.
Yeah.
And so around that same period of time, I had discovered a guitar in our house, and it just listening to Incubus and trying to play some of those parts is really where all of that started. One of the most difficult songs I think that's out there to play right was done on an acoustic guitar, and it's called Drive by Incubus. Everybody knows the song.
Mm-hmm.
And it uses a lot of different voicing chords that to me are super difficult to play, and it's even harder to play them right. And then if you go out and try to perform it live, and let's say that you're playing the song and singing it at the same time, if you remotely screw up doing it, everybody knows, because everybody knows the song well. So for me, it was the guitarist from Incubus, Mike Eisinger, who really inspired me to pick up a guitar and actually play something on it. It sounded completely like junk for like, I don't know, probably the first 4 years.
Yeah.
But the longer I kept at it, I noticed that the easier it got. And then as soon as I got a different guitar that played much better, I was like, oh my God, what was I doing with the first one?
Yeah.
Because the action was just super high, and play it, and it hurt my fingers. There was a reason why it did that. And so you buy a new guitar. I'm like, it's like a $600 guitar. And I'm like, oh my God, I should have did this so long ago. But I didn't know what I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have a dad that knew anything about playing guitars or any instruments, so they didn't know.
So where did this guitar come from then? Like, whose was it originally?
I think my dad got it from something, because it was my dad's is what it was, and the action on it was like 2 inches high, and I mean you had to have like spider fingers to try to play the damn thing. It was brutal. The name of the guitar, I can remember it plain as day. It was called Ventura.
Okay.
And I can tell you right now, see a guitar that has the word Ventura on it, you might as well throw the thing in the trash, because it's junk. Like, straight up. It is trash. It's going to sound like a cardboard box, and it's going to even play even worse.
But the cool thing...
You just got to...
Dude, I love talking about like old instruments or the first guitar you picked up, because the first one I picked up was some no-name job that I want to say one of my uncles had put together when they were young. They like bought a kit or something and smashed this thing together, and it worked. But it's the same story as you: acoustic guitar, like 2-inch action, maybe 40-year-old strings, and I'm learning on this thing. And about the time a string broke, I was like, well, what do we do here? I don't know what to do with any of this, you know. Then I got
Yeah.
a guitar. My parents finally caved and bought me an electric, but
Those strings, man. Those strings, I'm telling you, those old junk strings, they get rusty, they stab you.
yeah.
Next thing you know, you got to get a tetanus shot. I mean, it's just, those guitars are trash. But a funny story about me and my first guitar and really trying to like say, hey, I think I want to take lessons here. My art teacher from school could play guitar, and I mean, I didn't know what I didn't know. So my mom takes me over to this gal's house, and I knew her very well because her youngest son was the same age as me. And she sat me down. She was like, here, I'm going to show you these 3 chords, and that's pretty much all you ever need. And so I was sitting there thinking, how in the hell do you play any of this Incubus music if you're just using these 3 chords? You know, he didn't even like have any sort of clue. I mean, it was like, strum this 4/4 pattern, and this is all you'll ever need in life. And oh my God, it was so bad. I never went back, actually.
Oh man.
I completely decided to go a completely different other direction, because at that time you were still able to go to a mall. Okay, like kids today probably won't ever know what a mall is because these things don't work. Like they don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So I was venturing through the mall one time and came into this bookstore, and it legit had like tablature and all the music for Incubus, and I mean it had everything, Pantera, like Metallica. And so I would buy these books, and it was weird how accurate they were. And they were 100% accurate.
Yeah.
So I still have them. They're in the other room. I've got stacks of them. And I basically sit down and I would listen to that CD, or I would listen to that particular song and like pick out those parts and just play along with them until I got the whole thing down. And that's really how I learned how to play a lot of music. And to this day, just like every other guitar player out there in the world, except for a few, I mean, we can't read sheet music. I mean, we all know what tabs are, and everybody else is like, how do you play it? And I'm like, and then you just show them, and they're like, but if you put a piece of sheet music in front of them, be like, what is this?
Yeah.
They just throw it away.
I'm the same way, man.
That's how I learned.
You know, and that's really crazy, because just explaining that story, you can tell like about the time frame when you learned. It was probably like late 90s, early 2000s. That's my assumption.
Yep.
And because that was like when like tabs were always a thing, but they weren't ever popular. And then they became popular via those books. And I mean, I recall those. You go into guitar stores, Guitar Center, magazine shops, like anything. Like they usually had some of those books. And I've got a handful upstairs. Like same thing. Mine are punk kind of stuff. But like I said, I got some of those books upstairs, and that's how people had to learn. And that was before tabs on the internet were popular. Like you could Google tabs, and you might find like a small passage of part of a song, and it's like 70% correct. You know, and nowadays it's a little bit easier because it's like, well, this is obviously really close, or you can look up like 30 different versions and mush them together to make a right one, you know. But like back then, those books was pretty much all you had, and they were ludicrously accurate.
Yep. Now, if had you and I been like, 15 years older, you'd be like the guy that lives across the street from me, my neighbor. He's like, well, back in the day, when we went to try to learn a song, we just had to sit there and try to play around with it and guess till we figured it out. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, no, that's how we did it. And I thought, oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
So now you just on to Google and you type in whatever you want, and you find so many different versions of this stuff. And the first thing that I do every time, I immediately click on the song, and then I don't even look at it. I just immediately scroll down to the bottom and see how long and how bad the comments are just to get a good what it might be. And then if there's like one comment that's like, good song, bro, I'll be like, oh, so it must be okay. And I'll scroll to the top and I'll be like, yeah. Then you play through it once and you might have to change the key to fit your voice better or what have you. But, that's just how we do things now.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's an original song that you write. And that's even more difficult to try to upload your own music onto these sites. Because I actually have tried to take music from my DAW, because in Reaper you can do the tablature for it, and then you can actually say, hey guys, if you like this song and you want to learn how to play it, here's the tabs for it, here's the music, you can follow along and do it at home too.
Cool.
So it's just kind of another step to in some way try to connect with your fans. I was really trying to do it so that I could give something to my keyboard player and the other guy that's in my band who plays drums and maybe guitar. So then that way they could just find a way to play along with the music as well and know where I'm at.
Yeah.
And if it works, it works. And sometimes it doesn't work. And they usually let me know when it doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, I've been in a handful of different bands, and how they do things like that is always kind of intrigued me. Like I said, I've been in a few bands. All of the bands I've joined have been established. So like when I want to learn their music, it's like already written out. Sometimes they have like, well, here's the lyrics and here's chord changes above it, and the rest of it just do whatever you want. And I've like also done stuff where people have extensively written out tabs in Guitar Pro, and been like, this is what I want you to play, this very, very exact thing. So I've done them both, and it's kind of fun to see how bands write all their stuff down or catalog their material. Go for it, man.
I mean, isn't it interesting how some bands, like you have like two different types of bands. You've got like the band where like everybody is like super particular about how you play the music. And they're like, hey, this is the way that it sounds on the album. And by God, this is exactly how we're going to play it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the other bands. I should say that there's three kinds that I see. Then there's like the other guys that they don't take it as seriously, but they put their own touch on things. And then there's the other bands that you see sometimes that, to me, completely take the song and completely change it around, and you may not even recognize it. The words may be the same, but I do. I actually have to say that I'm guilty of that. I actually like to take songs such as Miley Cyrus's "Wrecking Ball," or there's some other little rap songs out there that you can take, convert them, and change them into like a bluesy jazz kind of ensemble, and you go out and play them live to people, and they're like, it takes them just a little bit for it to register in their mind, and then they're like, oh man, that's actually pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Other people, they don't think that it's really that cool, but you can always judge a customer based on their facial expressions, no matter how drunk they are or not.
Dude, I love that too, because you'll be sitting at a bar like listening to a band, and they're in the corner, and maybe you're having a conversation with your friend, and they're playing something, and you're like, this sounds neat or whatever, and then they like bust into the first words like "Shorty, get down," and you're like, oh, I know this song, like this is a rap song, like.
So I could play you a little bit about the No Diggity cover that I actually just did. And I actually completely took the song and kind of flipped it around and changed it a little bit. And then I've also recorded a studio cover version of it.
Cool.
Where I actually added in, drums and I'll have it up on YouTube and stuff like that. I've got a, you go to YouTube and you type in Josh Wiig music, you'll be able to see a cover of that actual No Diggity song that I did, because I just posted it up maybe 2 weeks ago. And it's one of those things, like it sometimes it blows people's mind. And speaking of that, we have a gig coming up on the 7th. It's an online gig, and I hate to spoil this, and I'm sure people aren't going to watch this before that one, but we're going to open that show up with that actual cover. So
that'll be awesome, man.
That these people have no idea what they're getting into, because look at me. you look at me on the camera, and you look and you just say, well, this dude, he's some pasty white guy. He's 35, big deal, you know. But what is he going to do to surprise us? So, you know, I try to make sure that everybody's satisfied, but sometimes I come across as some straight-laced white dude, you know, and then I start playing No Diggity by Blackstreet, and they're like, what?
Yeah.
Hold on.
It's such a fun head turner too. They don't expect it. You're playing like All Along the Watchtower, and then all of a sudden it's just like, boom, here's a Blackstreet song.
Yeah, you just start into the chord, and they're like, oh, what's this song? And the next thing you know, you're like, sure to get down, good Lord.
Nice.
And they're like, wait a second.
If anybody,
this one.
Dude, if anybody's intrigued by this, I'm going to put a link to Josh's YouTube channel in the description down below. So if you're intrigued, scroll down, click the link, check it out. It'll be on his YouTube channel. There's also going to be other links down below, but we'll get to that in a little bit. I absolutely love the whole like covering tunes in a slightly different fashion. There's some musicians up around this area that do a little bit of it. There's not too many. I can think of maybe 2 or 3 that like really kind of change stuff up, and it's just like, well, this is a folk song with a capo on 7, and then all of a sudden it's just like, you know, like you said, here comes Blackstreet, or here comes, you know, Ice Ice Baby or something, and you're like, I have no clue this was coming out of here, but it did, and it's...
But we're back, I hope.
Yes.
And hope everything's cool. I kind of got distracted there, but I was trying to reconnect. Where were we at?
You know what? I forget. I could rewind and check it out. I didn't write it down. But yeah, let's discuss this. Let's switch gears here. We were discussing doing cover tunes and switching it up and playing rap songs and like, you are in a band, correct? It's called Open Interest Band. Does that sound right?
Yep.
Did I get it?
We go by the Open. Yep.
So is that?
And then I have my own deal here that I do. I do all my own original work down here, where I'm actually sitting in my one-room studio that I've got like 12 rack unit here. You know, the room's outfitted so that I can actually do quality recording stuff down here, and I write my own tunes, play my own MIDI notes, you know, do the guitar, do the drums, do everything based here, you know, just right here in my own room and in my own time. So, yeah, and you know, I do some work for some people out on the side, but mainly for me, it's kind of one of those things where recording my own music. It's more of I do it for myself kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I put it out into the world. I think I've got like 20,000 streams on one song that I put out. It's called The Wolf, and
Dang.
I've got about 5,000 others. So, I mean, you put this stuff out into the world, and you know, it's tough trying to get your friends and family really to accept what you do. Because I think they just look at it as like, oh, it's just something that they're doing to have fun and blah, 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 blah. You know, they don't really take it that seriously. And then when you go out and actually play music out in the world, they're like, well, I didn't know that this was such a big deal. And sometimes you surprise people, you know. Sometimes it's a surprise to people that you work with, and they're like, hey, man, YouTube suggested that I listen to your music. And I thought, this couldn't be the same Josh Wiig. So I listened to it, and it was you. And
That's
like,
awesome.
well,
That's awesome. That makes me wonder how invasive the algorithms are. But also, like, 20,000 streams on a song is insane. Like, for anybody, you know, just some Iowa Joe, you know, just making music and putting it out
Right.
there. That's a lot of streams. What do you use?
I think.
Go for it, man.
Go ahead.
Oh.
No, I was going to say, I think like 19,000 of those views were probably my mom.
Go mom. Moms are always supporting us. No, it's like, what do you use to distribute your music? Like, I've heard a lot of people go through a lot of different avenues. Me and a couple of my bandmates and a couple of my bands have discussed different avenues that people take. Do you use, I'm assuming, I'm just gonna guess, is it DistroKid or CD Baby? It's probably one of those two.
Yep. Yeah, I just basically created my own thing called Eremita Studios, and then I just use DistroKid I upload all my stuff. You're probably really familiar with it, and so is probably a billion other people.
Yeah.
And how you upload that, and then they, get it, distributed out into, Spotify, Amazon, Google Play, YouTube, like all these different platforms out there. I mean, I think they even take it around the globe
Mm-hmm.
because one song last year that nobody listened to it, like in the U.S., but if you were in China, it was like a big deal for a while. I mean, there'd be like 5,000 streams on this thing in like 6 days.
Oh, wow. That's
And
crazy.
weird. I figured some supermarket somewhere it got caught on repeat and they were just playing it every day. Because I'm like, nobody would pick this song that much to play it this much. I mean, not even me.
That's one reason I love musicians. We take ourselves seriously, but not too seriously.
Right.
So,
I mean, I like the fact that people are listening to it. But I'm like, wait a second. Have you heard these other 30 songs that I did? Because they're way better.
yeah. That's also like the weird thing about the artist is like you can create all these things, and the thing that everyone tags onto could be one of your least favorite things you've created. I mean, I'm sure it's no different for like artists who make like paintings and everything, you know? I'm sure it's the same.
Yep. I wrote a song sitting out on the front porch of my neighbor's house like 2 years ago. I call it Iowa Summer. Super easy to play. Kind of just a laid back, kind of end of summer song. And I played it a couple times live, and then like people started actually requesting it. And it was probably one of the least favorite songs I like to actually play of my own. But you get people that are like, hey, could you play that Iowa Summer song? And I'm like, yeah, okay. And so I would play it, and then it kind of just like took off into its own direction. And I ended up actually doing a full-blown studio version of it. So
Cool.
And it turned out. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, man.
So as far as doing like solo tunes and band stuff, do you split your time 50-50 between a full band and solo stuff, or is it just kind of take the gigs as they come, or do you guys play the same material, or do you switch it up when you play solo, or?
So I couldn't tell you the last time that I actually had a solo gig. It might have been last year. I mean, this whole year has just been terrible for a lot of things. But I think it was last year I played like one solo gig. There's just something, and this is going to kind of sound harsh, but there's only so much like a solo acoustic music that I can listen to before I'm like, okay, I need to hear drums. I need to have, some sort of backing vocal with some of this stuff. So what I do is I will sit down here in my basement, like a hermit that I am, and I will create my own music. I'll put it into a studio version, and I'll distribute that out into the world. But then what I also do is I'll put it together, and I'll present it to the other two guys that I play in the band with, and we'll actually incorporate that into a set list. And so as you're playing cover tunes, you're also adding in your own originals from time to time. And if I can work in 5 to 10 originals in a 2-hour set or something, that's decent exposure to a new crowd, because there's always a lot of people in these small town bars that never heard any of your music.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can get them drawn in and captured by playing some other tunes, cover tunes that they really know, and then throw an original tune at them, and give them maybe a little bit of a story, not a whole lot, because people, in knowing your customer, you've got just like 8 seconds to capture them or lose them. And so you've really got to like keep the ball rolling. And the one thing that I was always annoyed with when I would go out and watch other bands is between songs, they would literally have a 5 or 8 minute like in between song break where somebody would talk and they would tell them about the song they're going to play. And then they would play you a cover song that you already heard 1,000 times. So instead of me going out there and telling people all about this and about the emotion and about where I come from, I try to leave it up to the audience. because every song that I've ever heard, whoever wrote it, it doesn't mean the same thing to them as it means to me, because we all are live somehow to the emotion of that song. And there's a lot of people that are like, man, I really connected with your song that you wrote, and I can relate to it. And then I'll ask them, what does it mean to you? And they're like, well, what does it mean to you? And our versions may be completely different. So I really like to give somebody an original tune and then let them decide how does that connect with their life.
Yeah, that makes total sense too.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, to me, I'm not trying to tell you exactly, hey, this is what I was thinking when I wrote this, and this is how I did it.
I'm sure there's some like art to that too, as far as writing the song and not being so explicit about every single thing that's happening in the song. Because, I mean, you can't just be like, I dated a girl, we didn't get along, she dumped me, I'm sad. Like that's too direct,
Right.
Because then it doesn't leave any interpretation to the audience.
So, I would say that I've been writing my own music for the last, 3-4 years, like really specifically, making a dedicated effort to write better music. And I can tell you that the first full album that I actually did was 18 songs long. And I like to call that, basically purging the septic tank of all the emotions that are in your head, because once you get all of those out, and there's nothing else, the tank is empty. Okay. You've said what you needed to say. That's when you can really take a step back and start writing actual legitimate music that may, I don't know what you want to call it. It may actually connect with more people, because now it's not really emotionally driven, but you can actually make things more specific to what does this song mean, like serving the song. And to me, it took a little while to drain the tank, so then I could start focusing my mind more on, hey, I've heard these keywords. Today I seen something, and this is how it all starts with me. I seen a quote today, and just one line in it really struck me. And the first thing I did was I grabbed a piece of paper and a pencil, and I wrote down the piece that really stuck out to me. And it was called "Distracted from the Sadness." I don't know what about that kind of thing made sense to me, or why it clicked, or why it stuck, but I wrote it down. So we'll see what comes out of that.
Yeah.
Maybe you can harness some of that stuff and turn it into a song, I guess. But more and more lately, I've been writing songs freely, just seeing where things go. And then once I get something done, I'll play the song from end to beginning, and then I may cut it up and play it in reverse or forward or however it may be, because the more times you play it, the more times you move stuff around, the better you can make a song.
Yeah.
So,
dude, I 100% agree with your like purge the septic tank analogy. Let me just put it this way. Like I play music. I'm a quote unquote musician. I'm not a songwriter. I'm bad at it. I don't like doing it. But some of that is the fact that I never once purged my septic tank. Everything I write sounds like doo-doo to me. Yeah. And I need to get that out there and get rid of it so I can start with something new. Because I'm sure every guitarist has this. We've all gone through like the same tired. It's like, oh, I found this riff. I made it. It sounds cool. I'm going to play it 700 times at sound check. Never write a song about. I'm just going to like every time I have a free second, I'm just going to play it. And all my buddies are going to know this because I play it 4,000 times over and over and over again. Turn it into a song. Get it out of your head. Get it gone. Start something fresh. That is such a good thing that you said there. As weird as it sounds, I was never once like, I was like, I don't really want to record my own music. I'm not good at it. People won't like it. I have this little, I have a little bit of a self-confidence issue when it comes to that. But recently I started recording some of that, and it is exactly what you're saying. I'm taking some of these riffs that I just play over and over again in my basement for no reason and putting them in an order, and now they have like a purpose, and they might not be the best, but they're out of my head and they're somewhere now. And I can start with something fresh. I mean, it's almost like cleaning the slate off.
Yeah, you have to do that from time to time.
It's brilliant. I love the analogy, man.
I've had this deal stuck in my head. It's like the beginning of a chorus, and it sounds kind of like an early 2000s, like kind of punk chorus line that it should be. But for whatever reason, I have failed to be able to put anything else together with it. And it's been driving me nuts lately. And the other thing weird is that the way that it sounds in my head, I don't think I can actually even sing it. I might have to have somebody else try to really actually get it done, because the way that I hear it and the way that it should be, I just don't think I can get it accomplished. But it's one of those things where it's like it keeps weighing on my mind about what this chorus line or this hook is going to be. And yeah, I know it starts in A. I have no idea where it goes from there, but I figured that out the other day because I was messing around with it, because I was like, I've got to get this wrote down on paper and record it on my phone just so that I can just move on. But I have never been able to figure out where it goes from there. So,
dude, that's something too. Writing things down on paper is very important. You will lose that muse as fast as you gained it. I mean, I can't think of the amount of times I've driven home from Des Moines and been like, dude, this is a great idea for just a basic concept of a song, like this situation or this something. And then I get home and it's only a 2-hour drive and I have nothing else to think about. And I get home and I already forgot it. And it's like I should have pulled over and written it down.
Okay, so I was watching a Steve Vai YouTube clip once, and I was intrigued by the fact that he had on his bed this Zoom, like just simple Zoom like recorder, and he literally said, every time before I sit down and practice or play anything, I take this out, I set it down right here, and I click record. And it may be 5 minutes, it may be 2 hours, but if he ever needs to go back in time and say, hey, I can't remember what that was, but it was really catchy,
mm-hmm.
he can just rewind it. He can just rewind it and go play it. And so that's what I started doing, because there's no worse feeling than creating some sort of hook and it's 9 o'clock at night and you're dead tired. And the next day you wake up and you're like, oh man, that was a great hook. And then at the end of the day, you go back and try to play it again. And guess what? You can't remember really how it goes.
Yeah.
So always just taking that out and press and record. Record your practice session. Record what you might play, because you'll be amazed at what kind of comes out of those things. Recently, that's what we started doing when we practice upstairs in my living room. I'll record some of the songs just so I can go back through and listen and say what worked here and what didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it shows you either you've got a lot to practice or you're just never going to play that song again because it wasn't as good as you thought it was.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy you brought up Steve Vai when you talked about, writing down all your material or something, because I was watching a video of Steve Vai discussing the same topic, and he said that's how he came up with the song For the Love of God. It was a song that, I mean, it's one of his most popular, like, first songs that became sort of popular that he wrote, and he said the original tagline for that, like that thing was something he actually he thought of in his head and didn't have a guitar, and he sang it into a recorder, and he version.
He could remember done it too.
Yeah,
like, straight up.
Yeah, and so he just sang it into there because he was like,
it's gone.
yeah. If I can sing it close enough, I can pull it off on a guitar later, and that's what he did. And he actually said that, like, when he sat down to write his first album, he was like, I sang this into a recorder in like high school or something and pulled it out and put it on his first album. That's, you never know when something's going to come back and be like, this was actually one of your better things, and it's a good thing you wrote it down or recorded it. Or another thing that kind of got me into that was the digital age. Everyone started having digital recording studios, and it was like, well, if this is digital, we don't need 8,000 reels of tape laying around and have somebody like feeding them in and out and always recording, and we don't have to have an engineer sitting there making sure all this happens. We just have to have somebody hit record on the computer, and then we just go in the other room and play for 6 hours.
Right.
So a little bit easier to keep track of all that stuff nowadays than it ever was.
Right. Yeah. There's like, there's probably, I don't know, I've probably got like 5,000 different files in my computer that, I mean, there's like so much stuff in that thing. Because every track gets a name. Like, it doesn't matter if it's an acoustic track, like it's acoustic track number 3. I mean, it's all labeled and it's all filed away from the DAW into an actual backup and the whole thing. And there's a lot of stuff where, it's like you create something just really quick and you may not have the whole thing. You may have 20 seconds of it, but you'll actually at least be able to go back and search through some of that stuff if you file it correctly and say, what was this? Because you may be able to use that as a sample or a fill for something later down the road. And you just never know how it's going to go.
Yeah. The recent passing of Eddie Van Halen, I watched him. He gave a tour of his studio that he had made. And that was something that he had was, they recorded everything and cataloged it all on, and it was on analog, but they cataloged all of the stuff on a database that was no longer used, and computers don't use it anymore. So, unfortunately, somewhere in the early 2000s, he lost all of his catalog. He still has it all on reel-to-reel tapes, but he doesn't have any of it titled or cataloged anymore. He doesn't know what it is. Some of the stuff just doesn't have titles on it. It only has numbers and letters, and he doesn't know what any of it. I mean, he's dead now, so it's a sad deal. I get it, but who's going to end up going through that and trying to find what that stuff was? Or I don't know. I mean, that's the other thing when it's like, well, how did Eddie die? And they came out with another new 20 songs. It's like, well, that's because he recorded every single thing he ever did, And
right. It's kind of like if you go back in time and look at all the songs that Michael Jackson had to pick from. For every one or two, he would have sampled 300 or something, So every music producer out there in the world, doesn't have all their stuff on display. I mean, they may have a catalog. I actually have started a catalog of my own songs. They're all copyrighted. They've all got their own backups. They've got all their own masters. I've got everything wrote down, even in a book on paper, which is completely probably archaic, but every setting, this is how I got this particular sound. This is the compressor that I used, all the tech specs, all that stuff. This is the guitar that I used. This is the amp simulator, or I actually used my own amp and mic'd it, and here's how I did it. But there's a lot of people out there that are creating, that are just basically filing this stuff away. And then they're hoping that they can sell that stuff and, have an actual recording artist that might pick it up and use it in a studio. I know that happens a lot down in Nashville. So
yeah. I mean, that's not uncommon, actually. Speaking of other people playing your tunes, have you ever had anyone cover one of your tunes before? Maybe a local artist or one of your buddies or something?
I can't actually say that I ever have.
Oh man.
I just never have. Now I have done it to somebody else.
Nice.
Because I thought, I really like this song, and if I could change a couple pieces, I think it would even make it better. And so I did it, and he didn't show up to the gig to listen to it, so it kind of just went away. And now that you've said that, now I'm going to have to try to make it a point to figure out how to get him there, so then I can play his song to him again and see what kind of reaction I can get out of him.
I've been kind of pushing that towards people. I've been meeting a lot of singer-songwriters around Iowa, and I think it'd be fun if some of you guys covered some of each other's songs. And I mean, you've already cataloged everything and written it down. You got lyrics, I'm sure, chords, the whole 9 yards. It wouldn't be too hard for you to give the bare bones of your song to somebody else and be like,
right,
this is how I play it. Give it your own whatever, and we'll see what you come up with,
Shot.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things about the music that I write, I mean, not everybody, I guess I should kind of back up here. When choosing songs to pick to play, we really have to focus more on, if you're not going to change the whole structure of the song, when you cover tunes, it's really important to pick songs that fit your voice in that vocal range. And so you're not going to see me going and trying to sing some Journey or Sebastian Bach, some crazy shit like that. I do have a mid to kind of high voice. But then you get some of those other singers that are, professional that are just crazy. And I don't really have a traditional, what would be a traditional country voice, because I think every voice that you hear on the radio right now, it's kind of has, I mean, some people come to mind where they have a distinct voice, like everybody knows who Luke Combs is right now.
Yeah.
That's that big kind of powerful country voice. You don't see him singing any Journey either, do you?
No.
I mean, although I think he probably sings it in the shower every once in a while, but
wouldn't
you don't
doubt it.
see him singing it on stage. But I think to your point, it would actually be fun to find some people who have wrote some original tunes out there locally and just start razzing them with a bunch of their covers and say, hey man, I took your song and I've got it copyrighted now because I've created it this way. So
Yeah.
it's just one of those deals that it'd be fun to do some of that. I don't really know. Maybe you could hook me up with some of the folks in the state of Iowa, because down here in Southwest Iowa, really original artists are very hard to come by. I mean, there's really only like one guy that I know of around here that really writes any of his original tunes, and it's been years since he's done it.
Man.
So, from Des Moines and east, I think there's a little bit more. I think if you look at some of these Facebook groups, like where people are actually doing stuff in bands, if you go from Des Moines east, it seems like there's a hell of a lot more people playing music than down here in the corner of my state.
Yeah, I would definitely have to concur with that 100%. Like, it seems like everyone on the west side of the state goes to Omaha, and that's it. And everyone on the east side of the state, it's like Des Moines, Iowa City, Ottumwa. I mean, Quad Cities. It's like every big city has a little mini scene around it already. Northern Iowa and Fort Dodge, the scene up there has been getting bigger, even. So it's kind of that's the area where I'm at. But I mean,
so what kind of music do they like in that area? I mean,
up in Northern Iowa, man, you'd fit in great. Acoustic kind of stuff, folk-ish kind of stuff, singer-songwriter things. In Fort Dodge, I'm not going to say there is, but in Fort Dodge, almost every single night of the week there is live music somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
that's good.
It's getting big. It's to the point where Thursday nights or Tuesday nights there's jam nights in a town just outside of Fort Dodge. Wednesday night there's a show at a local pub and grub kind of place. There's also Thursday nights at another place. There's almost always Friday, Saturday night shows. It's getting kind of busy up here. I mean, you'd probably do pretty well up here. It'd be a long jaunt for you to get up here, unfortunately, but people would probably enjoy your tunes this way.
All you got to do is set the cruise on 100 and you get everywhere. Like, that's all you got to do.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, it's so funny. And that's
you set the cruise, hop in the back seat, mix you a drink. It's all
hop
good.
In the back seat. It's cruise control, not autopilot. And you're not shy about playing shows, though. We were discussing before we did the podcast. 2018, you were doing about 40 shows. 2019 was close to 40 shows that year too, as well. I mean, you're doing a show almost every single week.
Yeah, I mean, there for up until this year,
yeah.
Dude, like it was brutal because we canceled 17 gigs in the spring, just one right after another after another after another. And I mean, it was one of those things where it just sucked. Like every week, people were like, "Well, we're going to be not doing this." But like in years prior to that, okay, so like 2018, I mean, we played. If somebody wanted us to come play, and this is at the point in time where we were just like, yeah, we'll just play whatever gig, and our going rate was like $100 a person for like 3 hours. We're like, yeah, we'll just play it. Mm-hmm. Because we were just more about getting out and playing music.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it wasn't until like probably mid 2019 where I really started thinking about, okay, we have all these gigs booked. They're at bars, they're at wine bars on Sunday afternoons. They are, all these different places. And it really started when we would go and play these gigs. Like, you would quickly figure out where you should come back and play and where you shouldn't go back and play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, anybody who is like in tune with business at all, one of the key things is always knowing your customer. Okay. So not only do you have to know who the owner is, but you have to know what kind of clientele they bring in. Like, is this a 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock gig on a Sunday afternoon for the 50, 60-year-old people that are going to come out and enjoy 2 glasses of wine and some cheese, and then they're going to leave? Like, you can't just go in there and just start jamming songs in a place like that. And lo and behold, I tried.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what I didn't know. I just thought everybody wanted to have fun and party, right?
Yep.
Well, I quickly learned that knowing your customer and knowing your audience are like massive things that you have to do.
Yeah.
And so that really changed the face of how I would go about booking gigs, because you would still have people that would contact you and say, "Hey man, you want to come and play this deal?" And I would just flat out say, "Hey, I'm sorry, but I know who your customer is, and I know that I don't play music that will entertain them."
Yeah.
And I don't want to turn down money, but the thing about it is, we're not the people that you should have come and play, but I know who should be there.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you get to know your local area, you know who's playing music and who would fit in best.
Yep.
And maybe I think there's a lot of times where, like down in my area, yeah, there's a lot of different bands that play. But there's a lot of bands in my area where I feel like instead of us supporting one another, everybody's like, well, I think this guy's better than me, or I'm not gonna go watch them or support them because they play music that I don't like, or whatever. And it's, to me, if I know that there is a place to go play, and I know that it's not my kind of music, like my kind of audience, or someplace that I need to play, I know that there's probably like 10 different bands around here. There's at least one of them that I know that I could help get into that spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I try to do my best to keep that in mind as well. When you're trying to figure out places to go play, or people are asking you who's, doing what. And then you got to know who the other bands are around your area. So,
yeah.
It took me I can tell you, hands down, I have gone and seen all these local bands here, and there isn't a single one of these guys, and I know this, if they see this, they're going to be like, well, I don't know, I think he might be a little harsh here. But I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that I've gone and played multiple gigs, and I've also gone and watched a lot of the other local artists because I wanted to know who was playing what. But they don't come to our gigs. Now, either it's because they're older and they play more traditional music that is from the 50s and 60s and 70s, or maybe they just simply don't like me. I don't know. I guess you'll have to be the judge.
No, man, I totally get that too, though, because like I play in a punk band, and it's like pulling teeth trying to get somebody to come to a punk show. Like, and I get it. Trust me. Like I 100% understand where people are coming from when they're like, I'm not a big fan of punk music, but like I said, up here in Northern Iowa, there's a huge scene of country and folk and things in that area where it's guys sitting down with acoustic guitars and cajones and bass guitars and things of that nature. And those guys don't want to see punk music. And I'm more than happy to go to their shows, but they don't want to go to mine. And I just let it go because it's like, hey, I get it. Getting yelled at for an hour straight with fast drums is not your thing. Like, I get it, but it's also one of those things, like you said, you got to know your clientele and know where you're going. And it's like, yeah, you guys aren't going to come to some bar in Des Moines to watch me play at 11:30 at night on a Saturday. I understand that because nobody wants to drive home after that, et cetera, et cetera. Right. But it also helps to know your clientele. Like, we've been asked to play what I can only describe as a family picnic. It's like a big family picnic, and it's like, well, we're a punk band that says very abrasive things on stage if you're
Yeah.
paying really close attention. And we had to just tell them like, I don't think this is gonna work, buddy. And they were like, why not? And it's like, you didn't listen to any of the lyrics, did you? So I'm not gonna bring us there and say this stuff in front of people. Like I'll leave that for the Saturday night bar crowds in Des Moines. But yeah, you have to know your clientele. You're 100% correct.
Here's another thing that's a message to all the people that own bars and places, live music venues. The people that are booking these gigs also have to do their due diligence.
Yeah.
Because I have ran into multiple amounts of people who have no idea what kind of music we may even play. They've never come to a gig. You'll give them YouTube links, you'll give them this, you'll give them that because they request it, and then they fail to listen to any of it. And then they book you to be the opener for a guy who's going to sit there and strum an acoustic guitar and play every Garth Brooks and George Strait song that you've ever heard in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you come in there and you're playing cover tunes from Lady Gaga to, Bryan Adams. And they're like, well, I didn't expect this from you guys. And I'm like, well, you obviously never listened to any of our music or ever came to any of our gigs. Like, it also falls back on them who are booking that gig too, like it'd be kind of like you guys playing punk music and you're like, hey, we want to have you guys come open, but the guy that's playing after you, he is an R&B singer. And so, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just doesn't work.
It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. Sometimes it can. You can totally mishmash like you said, like, oh, we got a metal band, a punk band, there's a folk dude. I mean, sometimes stuff like that can work. A lot of times there's not a lot of audience retention, unfortunately. But I totally get what you're saying. There's a lot of things like that happen with, especially being in a punk band that plays, like, we play very fast metal style drums. There's fast solos. It's not typical punk music. So we get booked with like metal bands sometimes, but they're like even more intricate than us. So it's like we're on the low end of that spectrum. But when we play with strictly punk bands, it's like, dude, you're the only band that ripped a solo tonight and you did it every song, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, we try. Yeah. And sometimes it's like you've created something that's like, well, this isn't something that everyone else is doing though. So it might be kind of hard for you to fit in somewhere. Cause like we said, there's not very many people that will go from like Blackstreet to Lady Gaga to maybe throwing in a country tune. We got a Bob Dylan song, and then we're coming back with Lady Gaga and you just start throwing in all these oddities. And it's like, you might be one of the only people doing things like that. There's not too many people playing that wide of a berth of music. Like I said, I only know a couple within the state at all that are doing things like that.
So we'll play like Mary Jane's Last Dance.
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll be followed up by like a rap song that I converted I got $20 in my pocket.
Yep.
We play a version of that I completely redid and composed to make it actually work right.
Mm-hmm.
The odd thing is that it works. I think I don't know how to explain it other than it's kind of a hybrid set list of songs, and it's mainly put together based on beats per minute, the key of the song, and then also the set list is composed mainly based, like, if you just picture in your mind a roller coaster ride. You got the highs and the lows and everything in between. So, and then you sprinkle in an original here or there and a cover tune and then something that's completely off the wall. And it really just kind of rounds out the set list and people have fun.
Yeah.
And the way that I know people have fun is that they're up dancing. They're of all different ages. They're having a good time. They're obviously spending a lot of money at the bar, and that's what we got to have in order to get paid.
That is true. Oh, man, that's something that a lot of people don't ever think too much about when they book a show. They're like, dude, we played a show, the place was full, we didn't get paid much. And it's like, well, that's because nobody drank, or, you brought people in, but they didn't bring in payable business, and that's a tough one that bands have to that's a thing that bands have to think about too. There's so many bands that are, oh, the music scene's dead, nobody comes and supports us, et cetera, et cetera. But you kind of have to be able to draw some people, and it's probably the worst thing to talk about to musicians is like, well, if you're not a draw, then it's unfortunate, but like you might just be stuck at an opener for the rest of your time. And I mean, I've seen that at like Battle of the Bands too, where it's like, oh, we don't like these guys, blah, blah, this, that, and the other. It's like, yeah, but they brought 1 billion people, I mean, if other people like them, it really doesn't matter what you think, because if they're bringing in money, that's what matters,
And that's what matters too. I mean, it matters at the end of the day. I mean, the money is going to dictate a lot of different things. And the draw that the people actually come in, I mean, it doesn't lie. Like the first place that we went and opened for, it was a gig back in August of 2019. And I mean, the place was packed. They sold the place out. It was 350 people. And it was one of those things that, like, for me, I would very much rather stay to myself. And I'm very much okay being alone, and that's why my studio is called Eremita Studios. That translates in Latin to hermit, because when I'm down here, I'm just like on my own. But I'm very much a people person when it comes to having to be one, and I get along well with others. And so for me, when we went and played that gig, and there was 350 people in this place, to me it wasn't really a big deal. But for the other two guys, I mean, they were just, the look on their face was kind of a deer in the headlights at first, but they loosened up after a little while and had fun with it. I think some of the stuff that I did in the past with me having to be in the public eye, really, once you really like gone and done some things where you've had to put yourself out there, you kind of get those butterflies out, and then it doesn't matter if it's a crowd of 3 or it's a crowd of 350. I mean, it's pretty much the same deal. But you got to remember that if you screw up, you don't make a big deal out of it, because 98% of the time, nobody ever notices.
Nope.
No. You just got to keep moving.
The only people that will notice is usually the musicians standing in the corner of the room. Some other musician might be like, did you miss a fill? And they just kind of give you that like squinty-eyed look, like, whoa, what was that? And you just kind of give them the wink and the point, like, yeah, you got it, buddy.
I always use the excuse when I play a wrong note on the guitar that I was playing a jazz chord.
Yeah. It's jazzy.
Because jazz guitar players play like 1 billion notes and nobody understands any of them. And you're like, I was just like, hey, it was jazz, man. Just happened.
I actually found a thing for like people who give guitar lessons on ways to speak positively to your students, and that was one of them. Was man, you are excelling at jazz right now, instead of you're playing a wrong note. So like I always thought that was pretty funny. You do actually have that show coming up. We mentioned it earlier. I did want to reiterate it. It was the 7th. The 7th is your show. Do you say that was online only?
Yeah, it's a okay. So these folks in Omaha, they have a home. It looks to me like it's a full-on like home recording studio in their basement, and that's what they're doing. In fact, I've let like 40 other people kind of go in front of me, because you don't really want to be the first one in the gate when they're trying to figure stuff out, because when you're trying to really do something, you kind of got to let a few people go through the gate, and then they get all their quirks worked out. And then, so they were looking for people to come play, and I just never ever thought that I was worthy enough to go do this, right? But one of the guys who I met from Omaha, he does a lot of different videos and pictures and stuff. He actually messaged me, and he was like, hey, they're looking for a band to go do. Go do this. And somebody new, somebody who they haven't had in there once or twice already. And I had completely forgot about it. And then, so I reached out to them, and they're like, yeah, what day do you want? And they were like trying to get us to book. This was on like a Friday afternoon, and they were trying to book us for like a Wednesday night, like the very next Wednesday. I was like, wait a second. We haven't really been we haven't been really practicing or rehearsing because we don't have any gigs really coming up for the longest time. But we have this Halloween gig just this last Saturday. And so we really got back into the mode of all of us practicing individually and then coming together on either Tuesday or Thursday and really having a full-on rehearsal of here's the songs that we know that we need to play. And, you just kind of got to, you practice to win. So what we're doing is we're going out to this place. It's in Westo. It's in this really nice house. They've got the full basement is kind of like my house, kitchen, bar, like this whole thing, recording studio. And it's all an online gig. I'll have a link on our band page as soon as I get it. I actually asked them for it today because I thought, hey, I don't have the address where I'm supposed to drive, and I don't want to go into West Omaha like an hour before our gig and not know where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
And because then I'm just lost and it's not going to work. And then the other thing is people have to know where to go to view the thing, right?
Yep.
So I don't know if they're creating an individual link or if it's on a website or what the deal is with how to get people, directed to that. But I would say that we're in crunch time right now.
Yeah.
So I need that so I can get people funneled that direction by Saturday night so they can actually go watch it. It's called Live from Mars. The gal's name is Mars Booth. Real nice gal. Her and her husband are musicians. And so is their son. They really do a lot of stuff for the Omaha musicians. I mean, hands down, they do this stuff free of charge for the musicians. It's sponsored by the Reader, the Old Market. I think Live from Mars sponsors it. And there is just a lot of stuff that they do for the local Omaha musicians that nobody else is doing. And I know that I'm down here in Southwest Iowa, and I kind of get up into Council Bluffs and Omaha every once in a while to play. So I do appreciate the fact that they're doing that for people and just, trying to get some of these musicians out, get them heard. And they really do have a good following. I mean, some of these videos, you look at their YouTube videos and stuff, they've got 5,000, 7,500 views. I mean, so it's not like they're not getting, it's a deal. People are looking at it.
That's cool.
And so the guys and I, Matt, Greg, and I are going to go up Saturday night. We're going to play at 7 p.m. Central Time. And we have got about an hour and 15 minutes worth of songs that are kind of specific. And if you tune in and watch it, you'll see kind of how the hybrid set list of mine is put together. Because it's going to take you on some sort of joyride. And it's unique. It's original, and I like to explain the music that we play to people as there's songs that you have heard, there's songs that you haven't heard, and there's songs that you forgot you heard. So you will, that's just part of how music is, though, right?
Yeah.
Some songs that there's some songs that you don't know, and there's some songs you forgot you knew.
Mm-hmm.
That is kind of how I want to try to capture the audience better.
Yeah.
You can bring them back to a point in time where they were like, hey, I remember when the song came out. I can tell you exactly where I was at and what it means to me. So by kind of incorporating those three pieces of that into the set, it really, it sells the music better. And then also, playing that music with emotion and not just going through the motion of it. That also helps sell that to the audience better.
Yeah.
And I think in the music that I've been watching, I watch a lot of people go through the motions, and I don't know if it's because they've just stuck to a certain set list for so long that they've just fallen out of love with all the music that they play or what. But for me, I play music that I can relate to and that actually, I can play with some pizzazz, some emotion.
Yeah.
And hopefully it connects better with the audience.
Yeah, 100%. That show's coming up this Saturday. This episode was coming out on Thursday, so that's just in a few days. If you're listening to this the day it came out, so check that show out Saturday. There will be a link down below to Josh's Facebook. That way if you guys are like, well, I don't know where to find this link, well, just scroll down there to the band page, click on the link. He'll be sharing it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So,
definitely the ways. One of the things that I keep up on is I do put everything on our Facebook page. It's called @OpenInterestBand. And I do that because Matt and Greg also use that specific Facebook page to know when they have to go play gigs, because there's a lot of times where they don't write stuff down. And so, hey, I got to go check out the events because Wiig always puts them on there.
mm-hmm.
So what do we have upcoming, or what do we not have upcoming, or, you know, you got to, so they just keep up with it on there. And it's a great place for people to just, I don't really do a whole bunch with that page. I might throw something up every once in a while. I try to keep people informed, but I always just use it as like an events tab. I know there's so much more I can do with it,
Mm-hmm.
but I just haven't dedicated the time to really, you know, put much out there.
Yeah.
So I always do the events, though. I always put them out there because it's a great reminder of where we're at, and you can always follow the band there. The one thing that I'd really like to do is cross that threshold of maybe getting like 700, 800, 1,000 people to follow the page. I mean, I think we're sitting at like 600 and something, and I actually have no idea who. I don't know 600 people, to tell you the truth. I mean, I might know a handful, but it's one of those things, like when you look at your Facebook page and you're like, damn, we actually have like 619 people that like this thing.
Oh man.
My God.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
You know?
I do like looking at that
So-
kind of stuff. It's pretty fun to see that there's like, I don't even know any of these people and they like my stuff. So that's pretty neat. Rock and
Yeah.
roll.
The one thing that, you know, you said earlier that you have some self-confidence issues sometimes with some of your music and stuff like that. I had to get over that fact that kind of the people that are in my life that I think would be the biggest supporters, and like the people that would be like, oh yeah, man, that sounds great, they're not actually your biggest supporters. Your biggest supporter is somebody out there in the world somewhere that is just venturing through YouTube and finds your video and connects with it on some level and leaves you a comment.
Mm-hmm.
Those are your biggest supporters. Like, you don't have to go and try to sell it to your wife or your girlfriend or your mom or your dad or whoever. I mean, they're going to support you, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's good or bad. But you really need to try to go capture that audience that's out there, you know, that doesn't know who you are.
Yes.
And that's really making that connection between the actual artist and an actual person that's going to listen to your music.
Yeah, it's like an organic response. It's not just somebody who has the canned, like, that was great
Bingo.
every single time, you know? And I get it. Like, as rough as it is, that was the first piece of advice I got from somebody when I went back to playing music live, because I played in high school and then I quit for a while and then I started back up in my late 20s. And somebody said, don't ever expect your friends to support you. Because they're going to, but if you're always like, you have to buy every album and every shirt and be at every show, you're just going to be sad when they're not there. And they're not actually the fans, like you said, they're not actually the fans you really want. You want those people that have those organic fans. They were like, I came here to see a different band, and then I saw you and was like, oh, this is awesome. This is really cool, actually. You know,
I was pleasantly surprised by what this was. Like,
exactly.
Those are the people that you really want to go out and meet and really capture, because they are exactly like you said.
Yep.
They're organic. And, you know, if I just had, I'll just throw it out there. If I had 10 cents for every single person that I know that always asks me, where are you guys playing this weekend? And then they never show up.
Yeah.
I would have been paying my car off a long time ago, dude. So,
Oh man,
For sure.
yeah. That's 100% for sure. I mean, I'm sure everyone's gone through this plight that you and I are describing at least once in their musical endeavors. It's not uncommon. It's just the thing that happens.
you know, it's also one of those, here's a weird phenomenon that I've always thought was crazy. Like, you'll know people, and you'll like really know people. Like, you've worked with them for 5 years, or you've been around them for 15 years. And they finally muster up the courage to like come over and watch a show just because, for whatever reason, like they wanted to see what it was about. And they leave like pleasantly surprised, right? And they're like, I just never knew this. I never knew you could do that. You know, like, and you're like, okay, so now, like, okay, I've proved to you that, hey, we're decent or we're good. And that's really cool to finally kind of get that surprise on people.
Yeah.
And the better thing is if you can turn that person into a repeat customer because they really know who you are. If they can bring a group of their friends or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then you kind of make that passage or that bridge of somebody saying, hey, I know this guy personally and I know his music now too. And you guys should come and listen to it.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of a whole nother different subject to get into, but trying to get networked with people to come to your gigs, but they also have to be patrons of the place that you play at so that they can have money to pay the artists and this whole thing. It's such a big circle.
It is. It's a weirdly big circle. Oh man.
It all has to
go for it.
So, but the Omaha area, dude, is it's tough to go play music up there because you got people up there paying for like it might be a place that brings in 300 people and they'll pay a 5-piece band like $300 for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Or they'll pay some single act guy $50 and he's up there for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Or you got some guy that completely comes in and just is like, well, I'll just play for 2 drink tickets. You know, and I'm like, okay, so I've got this long list of places that I don't go and even try to play at, or if they message me, I don't try to do anything because, one, they don't pay, and my equipment actually costs money, and so does my time practicing. I mean, there's so much stuff that goes into it. I can't just drive an hour there and be like, well, I'm glad I got my free drink tickets.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
let me put it this way. I'm not...
you already know.
I'll play shows. You're watching me rub my face. I'll play shows. I'm not worried about it, I guess. But like, it is frustrating to be like, I drove 2 hours and the 4 of us got paid $18. I'm freaking tired of it. I get it's the way it goes though in places like that. Ludicrously oversaturated markets, like you said, people will work for a hot dog and a handshake, and it's like,
yeah, dude.
well, I mean,
So,
that just undersells everyone else that's legitimate musicians, you know.
So back in February of this year, we got asked to come and open up for this band, and thank you guys at the Over the River band in Counts Bluffs. I had fun even though I had pneumonia. We played for like an hour, and I just wanted to crawl in a hole somewhere and just kind of die. But we had a fantastic time, man. New place, new stage, the whole thing. And this guy that owns the place, he says, oh yeah, we'll give you guys come in and play and we'll give you a cut of, the door.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, oh, okay, cool. We'll play for an hour. We'll split $50 or we'll split $100 or whatever it was. And I was just looking at it as something fun to go do because we hadn't really been playing music at all during the winter. And this was kind of a spur of the moment thing. So we went and did it. And at the end of the set, I literally just exited the building because I was sick, and I just left. And my buddy Greg, the keyboard player, stayed, and he went to settle up with the guy at the door. And the guy says to him, well, here's your guys' cut. And I think it was like a total of $18. And Greg was like, you can just keep it.
Yep.
And basically, I mean, it's one of those things like you go into some of these places and you'll spend $20-$25 on drinks or something. And then you're like, hey, we played music for an hour, but we got $18. Alrighty.
Yeah. And it sucks. Yeah. It happens. You just roll with the punches and go with it. You're like you said, you realize maybe I don't play this place next time, or maybe I don't play this place every single week, or something like that. Because, I mean, like I said, I'm playing punk music, and there's a bazillion punk bands in Iowa, and we all play at the same places, and none of them pay extraordinarily well.
Howard's here.
Howard?
Howdy, come here.
Got a visitor.
All right, gotta chill out, buddy. Okay, we got his toy shut off. This is Howard.
Hey, what's up, Howard? Hey, buddy.
Say hi. This is Howard. He came to wreck the show, but
Nice. We're actually getting close to be the end of the show here. Do you got anything to say, Howard? Do you want to say hi to everyone?
can you say hi? No, you got to say it. You got to actually say hi. Can you say hi? He can talk. I know he can talk. He can yell. He can yell and scream. He can say a lot of bad words too that he shouldn't be saying.
Oh, I think we've all done that once, probably. Yep.
Anyway,
Josh,
so we've got this upcoming gig on November 7th. Can you be quiet, please? We've got this upcoming online gig on November 7th at 7 p.m. It's live from Mars. I'll have a link to the website on our Facebook page at Open Interest Band on Facebook. And we'll be playing for approximately an hour and a half, and we'll have a interview somewhere halfway in between that.
Cool.
And that's one way to connect with us. Folks can follow me, my own personal venture, at Josh Wiig Music. That is also on Facebook and Instagram. And, after this November 7th gig, I don't think there's a whole lot of people doing much. I mean, as this weather kind of changes and this and that, and this whole COVID virus thing is coming out, there's a lot of people that are shying away from doing anything inside.
Yeah.
Especially down here in my area, which is understandable.
It's understandable. Yep.
After the November 7th gig, it's kind of up in the air. I don't know really what's going to happen. We may just have to wait till next spring to finally get back outside and play some music someplace.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate it very much. I appreciate your platform to actually get out and talk to maybe some new people that are out there who haven't seen me before.
Yeah, definitely.
And I appreciate your time.
Yeah, stick tight. I'm going to end the recording here in a second. Josh, it's been great sitting down talking with you. You're a great guest, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, baby. Josh was a cool interview. Good to talk to. Easy to talk to. I mean, we covered an hour and a half almost just with two of us, so that's pretty cool. Not every podcast goes that easily, and, it's just the way it goes. Josh, like I said, Josh is a great guy to talk to, easy to talk to. If you see him at a show, say hello, say you heard him on the Audible Farm podcast, and give him a high five. I'm looking forward to hearing some of his stuff live. I've got some links down below. If anybody wants to scroll down below and check out the links, you'll be able to listen to and see and hear some of Josh's material down there. So check that out. All other stuff available for Josh is down below in the description section. So make sure you give him the like and give him the poke and give him the high five and the follow and the subscribe and listen to his tunes and everything. Do all the good stuff. Check it out. I feel like he would do very good up in my area, which is full of singer-songwriter types of people. I hope we can somehow bridge the gap between some of the areas in Iowa, because it's pretty cool. There's a lot of crazy cool stuff going on in different areas of Iowa, and a lot of people don't really know about what's going on in the other area. So that's kind of why we're here at Audible Farm, trying to help out. So if you guys are interested in Josh's stuff, check out his links down below and maybe shoot him a booking date or something. He does have that show coming up on November 7th. That is this weekend. It is a live event. Check out his Facebook page for more information on that one. There will be a link down below for that as well. Josh, shout out for joining me on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Taking time out of your day to join me to talk to everyone. So I really appreciate it. Thank you, Josh. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Hey, did you guys know that Three Finger Betty has a new album out? That's right, Three Finger Betty. That's the band that I play in. I play in a band called Three Finger Betty. We play rock and roll, punk, metal, something in that area. And we released a new album, and it's actually pretty darn good. That's me tooting my own horn. If you want to check it out, go to bandcamp.com/threefingerbetty. Actually, I think it's threefingerbetty.bandcamp.com. Yes, it is threefingerbetty.bandcamp.com. That's where you can find the new album. It is the Three Finger Betty self-titled EP. There are 6 songs on there, and they're doozies, everybody. This is kind of a fun album that we sat down and recorded, and hopefully next week I'll be have someone on here to talk to you a little bit about that and the trials and tribulations that went through recording an album, some of the difficulties we faced, etc., etc. So If you guys want to check it out, it is threefingerbetty.bandcamp.com. Thank you guys very much. There's been a lot of people listening to it and checking it out already, so really appreciate it, guys. Thank you much. And hey, I'll be back next week with another episode. It's going to be great. It's going to be just as good as this one, and that's going to be hard to top. So this week, like I said, this week's episode was awesome. I almost didn't have to do any talking, so shout out Josh. I really appreciate it. Like I said, next week, new episode. It's going to be great. I'm glad everybody tuned in this week. Tell some friends about the podcast. Give us the subscribe on YouTube, or give us some comments wherever you're watching or listening, so we know that people are out there listening to this. Thank you guys very much. I really appreciate you guys tuning in each and every week. And if you're a new listener, scroll back through the catalog. You might find somebody you know. All right. Well, that's it. I will check you guys next week. Peace.